David Pendleton.
Good morning, MZ.
Good morning. A brighter day is here.
All right.
Good morning. May we bring you Dave Michaels.
Good morning, MZ.
How are you feeling? Welcome back.
Oh, thank you.
God, yeah, you took a few days off. It was not the best of, wasn't a vacation or anything like that.
But my poor kitty had to be put down. Yeah, the best kitty in the world, MZ.
Wow. That kitty raised your kids for you. Huh?
Along with my help, yeah. She did most of the cooking and most of the shopping. And I just did, I did the meowing and, kind of licking around everywhere. I did that part. Yeah, so here I am. It's better that, that part has passed on. It's better for everybody, but especially for her. So, yeah. It's, you look for the silver lining in any cloud, MZ, and there you go. Things are better now.
Right.
Yeah. But I am back. I got back Wednesday and got back to a shipment that is ready to go.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, dude.
What's in the shipment?
Well, in the shipment, I noticed that we have, the Tangy Tangerine 2.5 and the Healthy Start packs. We have all that stuff, the digestion pack, the blood sugar pack, the bone and joint pack, the heart and brain, all that stuff, MZ. We have all of it, including stuff for your garden, stuff for your pets. We've got the whole shebang out there, MZ.
What don't we have?
We don't have root beer belly. If that's something, that's one of my favorites. Oh, man, I love these little sprinkles. Have you tried that, MZ? They're little probiotic sprinkles. They taste like root beer. You sprinkle them on your tongue. You let them dissolve. 10 minutes later, your tummy ache's gone. Your tummy ache is gone.
They're extremely delicious.
They're delicious, and they work fantastic. They work very quickly, and everybody loves them. That's why we don't have any. They must be on back order. Right. That's one of the things we don't have. But for the most part,
because I thought I ordered them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For the most part, we have anything that you're looking for out there at the Dave Cave. I'll be out there until 2 o'clock today. I also just got my shipment of KSCO gear in. That's jackets and T-shirts. I'm still waiting for the hats. I'm organizing all that stuff now. So that's not for sale yet because I need to organize and price everything. But the Tangy Tangerine and the longevity sale is happening, MC. Buy your Tangy Tangerine at regular price. Everything else is 30% off.
And you're here today until 2. Mm-hmm. But next week?
Next week, no, because I have 2 things that I'm not going to be able to make it here for, so it'll be the following week.
Oh, okay.
I'll be out here, and this is going to sound confusing, but I'll be out here Monday, Thursday, and Friday.
At what time?
From 12 till 7.
Oh, good.
Yeah, but I won't be able to be here Wednesday and Thursday, but I'll be here Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. You
should just come today because then you'll have the best selection.
That's why I didn't want to confuse anybody. Exactly. Just stop by today. MZ. Somebody stopped by and they were kind of joking me. They said, "Hey, Dave, you should have another sale. You should have another sale." Like that's all I do. Like every day is a sale. I have too many sales, and I say, "Listen, dude, you can never have too many sales. It happens once per month, 12 times per year. Get down here as soon as you can." Because it doesn't happen often. Although this guy thinks that they do happen, they don't happen often enough, MZ. I mean, who complains about saving money? Nobody. Except for Mr., Grumpy Pants, whoever that guy was.
Which Grumpy Pants?
The guy who told me that I have too many sales.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah. So if you like saving money, stop by the Dave Cave, MZ. I'll be out there till 2 o'clock today.
We love it.
All right, MZ.
We love it. We will talk to you soon, Dave. Now let's start the Catterday special. Not Catterday, Saturday.
Good morning. A brighter day is here. Good morning. May we bring you cheer.
We've got time, we've got tunes, we've got time, tunes, and temperature.
Get up and go, it's today, on KSCO Radio.
Good morning. Welcome to the Saturday special. On the air until 12 noon today, live
from KSCO.
You can participate if you want to.
479-1080.
Yeah, in area 831 or mz@ksco.com. Have we got a shoe for you today? So stay tuned, and I will explain exactly what that means in just a moment.
Good morning. Now stay right here on KSCO Radio.
That's how we keep people in suspense. We just let the music, the ominous sounding music, keep playing. Not give you anything about what's going to happen. All right, let's stop messing around here. I've always wanted to have a big developer on the air here on the KSCO Saturday Special. Today, that's finally going to happen after 31 and a half years. Oh, actually, 31 and 3/4 years we've had the radio station. And I have told the story a number of times of how my ownership of the radio station came to pass. I was doing a talk show on the music radio station, KSCO, back in the late 80s, about 88, called the CPR, or Citizens for Planning Reform Talk Show. It was a group of people who were pretty upset with the draconian practices of the city and county of Santa Cruz planning departments. And I thought it would be a good issue for an ongoing talk radio show. We did that. And it was a pretty popular show on the music radio station back at the time. The program was 6 to 8 p.m. on Monday evenings. And we gave people a microphone, an outlet to vent their frustrations or even positive experiences, and I don't think there were any of them for a period of time. And it got to be a pretty popular program. And during that time, when the program was pretty popular, I heard rumblings that KSCO was going to be for sale. And I said, wow, I wonder if I could buy the radio station and have it be a talk radio station all the time, not just 2 hours on Monday evenings to bitch about the planning department. There's a whole lot of other things to talk about, right? So that's what happened. And on February 1st, 1991, I took over as owner of KSCO and we assembled this wonderful staff, many of whom are with us to this day, almost 32 years later. Back then, the most, how should I say it? The most politically charged issue was development, okay? Development was a 4-letter word back then, and development continued to be a 4-letter word, and in many people's minds, development to this day is still a 4-letter word. And so whether you're liberal or conservative, whatever your politics were, just about, back in those days, just about everybody agreed that Santa Cruz is a wonderful place, and we don't want it to turn into another San Jose. Right? No one wants that. So there were a couple of ballot measures in 1978. Measure O in the city of Santa Cruz and Measure J in the county of Santa Cruz that were basically the same issues, but they needed, a separate, election, because one was for the city and one was for the county. And they were growth control measures that basically stated that going forward, it shall be the purpose of the Santa Cruz City Council, in the case of the city, and the County Board of Supervisors, in the case of Santa Cruz County, to manage growth efficiently so that it will not and may not in any way exceed the growth rate of the state, of the general growth rate of the state. And that it's up to the Board of Supervisors or the City Council to figure out how to implement that. And both of them decided to make it very difficult to develop anything, whether it was a single-family house to get a permit, or a minor land division to split one parcel into 2 or 3 or 4, or a major subdivision to create many new parcels. From 1978 going forward, it became very, very, very difficult to develop anything, to build anything, all right? And that was the prevailing political opinion, or for what? For going on 50 years now. I mean, more than 50 years, 78, going on, it's 42 years from 1978. Something has happened recently. The tables seem to have turned. The political tide has seemed to have changed from anti-development hysteria among the government agencies to, oh my God, we better start developing the hell out of this place. And that is a fascinating topic, and that is the topic of today's Saturday Special. It's one of my favorite topics to discuss. And back in the 70s, when I was in my 20s, I wasn't really politically active, but because I had tried to, and I succeeded in building a house, but you would think that I was proposing to develop all of the open space on the coast between Santa Cruz and San Francisco, when all I really wanted to do was get a permit for a 72-foot by 122-foot upslope lot in West Santa Cruz to build my house. And I thought it was horrible what I was put through. I had to go to before a zoning board. There was only one person on that 5-person zoning board who could even read a set of drawings, of building plans. And all of the others, this board together had the power to tell me what materials I was allowed to build my house of, and what color it was to be, and what the design was to look like. It was called a design review zoning board that I had to go before. And this was in 1979. And I got to tell you, that experience changed me forever. It changed my outlook on government and freedom and so forth. And I also will tell you that in 1978, which was, right before I purchased the property, I voted for Measure O and Measure J because I didn't want this place to become another San Jose. Anyhow, it's a fascinating topic to think about how things have seemingly suddenly changed from development being a 4-letter word in the eyes of the people who control the government here, in the eyes of the government agencies, to almost a 180-degree reversal. Now you see high-density developments being approved left and right at a pace we've never, ever seen before. And I think that the reason for that is because people have realized that prices and rents for housing in this area where so many people, it's such a high demand area where so many people want to live, have gotten to be so ridiculously, insanely high that normal people can't afford them. And the only way to maybe reverse that trend is to build, baby, build. So that's the topic of today's Saturday Special. From building hysteria to build, baby, build. And a gentleman here in the studio, a friend of mine for the last more than 50 years, I met Bill Brooks in the early 70s when he was a bursar, or a sort of like a controller of like a CFO, a CFO of a college, one of the colleges at UCSC where I was a student. So I got to know Bill there, and a few years later, I noticed when I was getting permits to build my house, they kept talking in the city planning department about Bill Brooks this and Bill Brooks that and Bill Brooks' project here and Bill Brooks' project. I said, I wonder if it's the same Bill Brooks. And indeed it was. Bill, welcome back to KSCO. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Good to hear you. Come much closer to the microphone, like within an inch, so so we can hear you nicely. What are your thoughts? Have you noticed this big change in the attitude toward granting permits for development, particularly high-density housing developments? And what do you attribute that to, if you agree?
Well, I think that you're seeing a lot of issues in the paper and politically discussion about creating low-income housing and trying to ramp up what we didn't do and should have done over the years to create more lower and middle-class housing. I think that a lot of it is lip service. I think when you get right into the nuts and bolts of it on processing a project and you're dealing with the staff and not the politicians, it is probably not much different than it was 10, 15 years ago.
Or 20 or 30 years ago?
Or 20 or 30 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so, well, something's changed because the people who were leading, who were in the government then, and were credited with creating the planning process that really slowed development down. You know, regardless of what your politics are, I mean, everybody agrees that the people who were in control of both Santa Cruz City and county for most of the last 40 years have been fiercely anti-development, right?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay, and there would never be a development such as the current development down at Pacific Avenue and Laurel Street. That's a 7-story gigantic, where the Habers, furniture and the old Taco Bell there, and across from Zachary's restaurant. That's a major high-density, high-rise development. And I understand that there are several others planned, right?
Well, I'm not so sure if there's any more 7-story buildings planned. That particular building sort of wiggle-waggled its way through the system, but there was a lot of benefit to the city. Where the old Mexican restaurant used to be.
Yeah. Tampico Kitchen.
Tampico Kitchen was bought and given to the city for low-income housing, and that was sort of the pay me to get your permit sort angle on that one.
Okay. And that happens to be
fact,
adjacent to the property.
Well, it is. In fact, the people that developed that I know quite well, and they bought that whole block. That was part of what they used to get that development through, and that was actually kind of hurried at the end because of the current city council at that time. They had a majority that was for it, and they did not want to have it flop over to the new city council because it looked like the people that would be queued up in the new city council would not have approved that. So had that project stalled for 6 months, I doubt if you'd see it there today.
Really?
That's correct.
Okay. So maybe the tides haven't turned as much as one would think they have.
Well, there's other pressures at play. And, with city council people, if you're loud, you're right. And the last thing a city council or government person in an elected position wants to have is the person that comes down and talks a lot and is loud a lot, staring at them across the table when they're trying to get reelected. So there's a lot of let's kind of make peace here. So if you're loud, you're right. And in a way you can kind of understand how that plays out. But because not much got developed over the last 20 years to meet the middle class and lower income housing needs, something had to be done. And a third party that was not subject to those sort of pressures had to step in and take over and make things happen. And it's actually happening with the state. The state has passed a number of laws that you would never see even entertained at the local level. And now the local level has an excuse. They can say, well, the state's making us do it.
Okay, specifically you're talking about accessory dwelling unit mandates, right, from the state?
I mean, I brought a list of them with me today that for better or worse, are going to speed things up in not only the processing, but allow building where it would have never been considered before.
You want to go over that list?
Well, one of the things as a local developer, and as I like to laugh at you when you say this big developer, I always kind of considered myself a medium-sized fish in a pond with almost no water in the development business. But, Santa Cruz City, for instance, most of the lots, R1 lots, type of lots you build houses on, are either 5,000 or 6,000 square feet. That's kind of typical. Now, in most cities, let's say you bought a piece of property that back when the house was originally built was long ago enough that people did what they often did, and they would buy 2 or 3 lots and build one house and use all of the land for their yard. And in more contemporary times, people would get it and they'd say, geez, I've got this humongous side and backyard. Maybe I'll build another house. And in the city of Santa Cruz, they had an ordinance that was pretty much a non-growth ordinance where they said, unless you have 20,000 square feet of land, you can't divide it. Now, when R1 lots are 5,000 and 6,000, you'd think, well, geez, if I had a lot that's 11 or 12,000, why couldn't I, create another lot and build another house? But that's typical of the way that cities and counties have organized things to slow down growth. Now, the state stepped in and said, no more. And
when did that first start to happen?
With the state?
Yeah.
I would say not that long ago.
Yeah.
Probably, 2 years even, 2 or 3 years at most, when they started facilitating building because they recognized that these cities were absolutely not meeting what they, assessed to them their responsibility for creating new housing to handle the growth in California. And I would say the lion's share of the cities never did meet those goals because of the kind of, rules and regulations that just slowed down building.
I've heard that even since these rules have been enacted, the planning departments around here are still dragging their feet. Have you heard that too?
Well, you know what? The way I see it is that you have the individual departments, the planning departments, the building departments, the public works departments, and they're run by managers that want to follow the rules to the letter. And, they don't really think that much about do we need housing? All they think about is, let's see, you have a 2-foot overlap on the sidewalk. I think we will not allow that house to be built. Rather than saying, rather than having a can-do attitude, they just seem to always have another kind of attitude.
Do you think it's going to change? Because it supposedly has to? But what are the consequences if the cities don't comply?
Well,
Do they lose money from the state?
You would have to ask them what leverage the state holds over them. I think that, they go on a list that they're not meeting their requirements. Now, if that affects their funding in different categories, which it very well could, I'm just not sure.
Right. What are your thoughts about orderly growth in a community such as ours? You think? Yeah.
I think any community does what they should do, and they lay out a zoning plan, and they decide certain areas will be housing, and certain areas will be commercial, and certain areas will be agriculture, and that gets altered a bit as it needs to be with different pressures. But my personal philosophy is it's sort of like you can't put 6 gallons of water in a 5-gallon drum. When we're full, we're full. And if all the 5,000-foot lots are built on, well,
got to create some new ones if you can.
If you can, and if it makes sense. But there is a finite point on growth as well.
Do you remember? Of course, you were here because I was here, and you and I have never left. Did you vote? Well, let's see. Were you a city resident? You either voted for Measure J, voted on Measure J if you were a county resident, or for Measure O if you were a city resident back in 1978. Do you mind telling us how you voted?
No, I don't mind. I was at the time living in the county, and I voted no on J. I thought that it was designed to slow growth from the political end, not from the technical end. And if you own a lot and it just won't perk for septic, well, then you shouldn't have a house if you can't build. But Measure J had other criteria that they slowed growth down that was more of a planning type.
Yeah.
And of course, who was in power then, and they actually orchestrated that quite well to stop growth.
Who?
Gary Patton, and still his the person that worked for him, Andy Schifrin.
I think Andy Schifrin is still working for the supervisors, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I know when Gary went out of office, he went to work for the 1st District. He was able to do that, and I think that was I'm not so sure he was aligned with Neil Cunity's philosophies totally, but
Neil was his successor.
Well, actually, Neil was had the 1st District, which is the North Coast, and Gary Patton, of course, had Mid-County and all that.
Oh, no. Gary Patton was the city of Santa Cruz, District 3.
District 3, okay.
District 3, same one. Same one,
all right.
Yeah.
But he stayed with him, and he's been very active. And I don't know how he always gets appointed to planning commissions.
You're talking about Andy Schifrin.
Yes, and all these, but he seems to, and I think it's to some degree a political machine that keeps that sort of thinking in power.
But it's not in power now if it's been overridden by the state, apparently, right?
Back I was doing a subdivision, in fact, the one on just before you cross the railroad tracks on 7th Avenue, or right afterwards, actually, if you're going towards the ocean on the left.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm processing that through the county, and they were months past the state's mandate on when they were supposed to have certain things done. And their attitude was, so what? Yeah.
When was that?
That would have been in the 80s, probably about the late 80s. In fact, I organized a protest that finally broke it loose and got it going, where I ran an ad. It was before email. You had answering machines then. I ran an ad in the paper, and I said, if you're mad as hell at the planning department and you don't want to take it anymore, call this number. And that's all it said.
Wow.
And
so you were another group that I didn't even know about.
Well,
I answered that ad. I answered an ad in Personals. I don't know what the hell I was doing reading Personals in the classified Santa Cruz Sentinel back in 1988, but it said, "Are you fed up with the permit process to build? Question mark. Yeah. Let's do something about it. Call this number."
Yeah. I wasn't interested in starting a movement, an ongoing movement, so much as I was just frustrated with my own situation. So anyway, people answered that, and my message was to them is that if you're mad as hell and you don't want to take it anymore, be down in the parking lot of the government center at 9 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday, and you don't even have to get out of your car. Just sit in your car and honk your horn for 15 minutes, because that's when the Board of Supervisors meet. And I went up to the meeting, and I said, if you want, come up to the meeting, but you don't have to. Just sit in your car and honk your horn. And anyway, I went up to the meeting, and you know, it was a big to-do because everybody was out there honking their horns, and the sheriffs were telling them to quit it. And if I'd have gone to Hollywood and hired people, it could have been better. A lady showed up with a big banner around her neck that said, I applied for a bedroom for my daughter when she was 6, and now she's 16, and I still don't have the bedroom. You know, that kind of stuff. And what that ended up doing, everybody told me, Bill, you're crazy. You'll never get anything approved again. And actually what that did is that all of a sudden, within a couple of months, my project did work through the system, and I was able to move ahead with it.
And how about subsequent projects?
Subsequent projects have moved reasonably well. I think that the more pressure the state puts on the cities and counties, the more it's going to allow housing that's needed to be built. But and I don't mean just rampant housing that is not thought through or in bad locations, but I think it will allow the resistance to be less, and you know, things can process through.
Okay, so maybe my premise for this show is all wet. I thought things had changed. I thought the political thinking of those in power locally had changed from what it had been for most of the last 40 years to 180 degrees, because suddenly they're approving things that they never would have approved before. And you're saying it was a fluke, the thing at Santa Cruz, right?
Well, to some degree. I mean, you know, the local politicians have to serve the local residents. And if there's any sort of discussion about opposition, they're hypersensitive to that, and you know, they don't want to step back and say, my wife's Chinese, and I love the way the Chinese do things to some degree, is that if they need to build a dam, to facilitate an area that has 9 or 10 million people, and there's 25,000 people in the way. They go there and they buy them out. They tell them, you got to leave. They're, and because their attitude is that, for the discomfort of a few, the masses benefit. And to some degree, you would like to see local politicians take that attitude rather than just say, well, it's not really politically popular to have or we don't want to buck our zoning laws and think this through more clearly. We'll just let it be the way it is, which is in the earlier times not so good.
All right. Well, I started to say earlier, and of course I got sidetracked, that when I was in my 20s, I was not particularly politically active, but I did speak before the city council and the board of supervisors on issues concerning development, and that they shouldn't be so strict. And I wasn't a developer. All I had done was built my own home and had my own personal politics, political beliefs altered in the process. Because in 1978, that was a year before I bought my property and then went to get a building permit to build on it. So in 1978, I voted for Measure O, because as I was a city resident. And I didn't want Santa Cruz to become San Jose. Well, looking back, how can Santa Cruz become San Jose? San Jose is flat. And there's land that goes on for miles and miles and miles. And we're landlocked by mountains and ocean and so forth. So how can it possibly become San Jose anyhow? In any case, my political outlook changed when I had to do cartwheels and was turned down once or twice on development, on the design of my personal residence. And by 1978 is when the growth control went through, and it wasn't until 1979 that I had the experience that you had already had prior to 1978. So it changed me entirely. I had taken economics classes at UCSC, and the laws of economics are just that. They're like the laws of physics. They can't be violated. Anytime you try to artificially limit the supply of something, as in housing units, and in the face of crushing demand, the certain, absolute, positive result is going to be guaranteed rising housing costs, prices, and rents. And I could see that as a young 20-year-old back then, and I started speaking out against that. I said, you got to let the market be. Don't artificially manipulate the market, or you're going to have problems pretty quickly. And indeed, that's happened. So, do you think that I've said it before on this show, build, baby, build. If they allow you to build, baby, build, and you get to have a lot more housing units, then isn't that going to kick the economics laws into operation? And aren't prices and rents going to go down?
Well, prices and rents, people ask me, how could real estate be so expensive in Santa Cruz? I mean, what is it now, $1 million for pretty much anything 2 bedrooms or more? Real estate prices are a function of demand and ability to pay. And with everybody over the hill that has any sort of job making $150,000 a year, and maybe there's another contributing income in the family of maybe another 75. I mean, they've got $10,000, $12,000 a month of disposable income. So all of a sudden, so what if my payment's $5,000 a month? And what's $5,000 a month buy me? Well, that buys me $1 million house. And so housing gets bid up because of the ability to pay, and also the lack of it. And in Santa Cruz, of course, that really comes into play, the supply and demand.
All right. I don't think there's ever going to be low-income housing because the costs of things have gotten to be so high that even if the land is free, if it's donated by some benefactor, just the cost to develop it, and certainly the cost to get building permits and so forth, are so high that the end result ain't going to be affordable by normal people. Do you agree?
Yeah, I've built, many affordable units. And of course, we have to subsidize those through the prices of the market rate units. And you're right. We feel that if we can get our materials and labor back from the price, we've done pretty good. We contribute the land and we contribute all the infrastructure costs. We're not able to get that back. In fact, with the escalation of prices, even today, it's gotten to a point where you almost, as you said, need to get the land for free in order to make it pencil out.
Even if you do get the land for free, is what I'm saying, it can't pencil out.
Well, when you go to the bank to borrow money, they say we want to see a return on investment of an amount. And if you can't show that, they won't lend you the money. Well, when you take your land cost, even if you pay for your land out of pocket, your building cost, used to be if you could cover the land, you could probably get a loan for the construction. And that isn't even happening anymore. Now, probably 20% of the construction you got to come out of pocket for. Otherwise, there's not enough margin that the bank could give you a construction loan.
And you don't see a reversal of that, do you, on the horizon?
No, I really don't. I mean,
if anything, it's the other way around.
Well, yeah, I think with building prices shot up quite a bit over the last year and a half with the COVID thing and whatnot. I know lumber prices were in the paper a lot, and we're seeing that starting to come back down. But because we live in the Bay Area where we live, labor prices are very high. I mean, 20 years ago, I paid $25, $35, maybe $45 an hour for an electrician or a plumber. Now I pay $125 an hour for an electrician or a plumber. And of course, and across the trades, it's like that. And that's why you see the people complain about the cost of building. Well, it's just materials and labors are very high now.
They're not complaining about the permit costs like they did?
Oh,
people used to say permits can cost as much as the project building itself.
Not only that, and on the smaller projects, that's true. Your permit cost, and when I say permit, I don't mean just what the city charges you. It's like your architectural costs, because when your plans go through plan check, it takes them 2 or 3 months to do that, and there's a dozen interactions with the city and your architect who's charging you by the hour. But the governmental cost, I used to tell the city council, if you would just take your governmental costs and divide and only charge me half, I could knock $100,000 off a house and still make the margin I make. And of course, the time to process this stuff. In my business, if I buy a lot from you, I have to either pay for it, there's a cost of money and time, or I finance it through you and I'm making monthly payments. Well, if I have to make monthly payments to you for 6 months to a year while I'm processing a project, then that adds to the cost of the project. Now, how could you cut that down? By by expediting processing with the cities and the counties. And in fact, some of these state laws are speaking directly to that. They're going to say, if you don't have this guy's project out of your court, not, you know, if you find something wrong and it's in his court, that's different. But if you don't have it out of your court in 45 or 60 days, it's automatically approved. Now, you know, they're putting those sort of pressures on the cities and the counties to try to get them to break their processing times loose and cut them down.
Is it working?
Not much, quite frankly.
Where has it been enacted?
Well, you know,
where it's worked at all?
I would say with the bigger projects, and the only reason why is that the bigger projects can afford to put the pressure on the cities and the counties. I mean, you know, like when you built your house, let's say they had a 30-day mandate and they went 50 days. Well, what are you going to do as an individual? Sue them? You know, you're going to hire a lawyer and spend the money and sue him? No, what you're going to do is sit around and wait for him to get done and finally get it and then complain about it. And that's what about, you know, 90% of the people that are applicants that process stuff through, that's what they do. Now, you know, your bigger projects, you know, they're not going to fool around with that with the city. They say, look, you've got X amount of time to do this. We expect you to do it, or you'll be talking to our bank of lawyers.
Wow. And do the cities or counties or governments care if they're talking to their bank of lawyers? Don't they have unlimited funds from the taxpayers to fund their own lawyers, which are on retainer anyhow, which are employed?
Well, yes and no. And I think you and I talked about this off mic before, is that if you find yourself in a position where a city or government department is stalling your project and you feel it's unjustified, and you can bring in someone that is as qualified as the professionals at the city or the county to say and write a position that you're justified in asking for what you're asking for, and the city or county continues to say no, what I tell people is sue them. And what happens is that they get served with a lawsuit. County council gets it, he reads it, he goes up to the planning director, and he says to the planning director, look, this looks like a real small potatoes deal. Why are you hassling this guy to the point to where he had to sue? And now, we'll defend it, but of course, you know, our cost in our department comes out of your budget. Now, do you really want to spend your budget money fighting something like this? Probably what you ought to do is get the applicant in here and figure out a way to get around this. And 9 times out of 10, that's exactly what happens.
Okay. We're talking with Bill Brooks, who's a big developer.
5'10".
Yeah. And we're talking about growth, growth control, growth management, prevailing public attitudes for and against growth in our communities, and how it seems to have changed. I'm changing my attitude on that. Maybe it hasn't changed. The only thing that's changed is that Sacramento has gotten involved in directing local planning and building departments to act a lot faster and to move to relieve the housing pressure by approving accessory dwelling units very quickly. Did I say that right, or is there something that's not quite right about that?
Well, the only thing that's not quite right about it, I'm not so sure they're approving accessory dwelling units all that fast. I mean, I've got one that was, I would say, fairly straightforward, but not real straightforward. on my own personal residence. In fact, it's a junior, what they call a junior AUD, and I put it in the system in May, and I hope to pick up the permit next week in September.
Wow. So that's 5. Well, that's 4 months. That's not horrible, but why shouldn't it be a month or 2 weeks or something?
I say, why does it take 4 months for 4 or 5 hours worth of work?
Yeah. I hear you. Okay, we haven't invited calls, but Buster is called. I don't know, about 9 minutes ago. Let's take his call. Hey, Buster, welcome to KSCO Saturday Special with Bill Brooks and MZ. You're on.
Well, thank you, guys. Real interesting. It really hits home where I grew up, Pacifica, up the road here. Is a good example, a real good case study in many ways of what's happening. It's a pretty standard method of operation. You could see it in other places. Why I say that, Pacifica is like a little sister town. MZ, you and I are very closely same age, so when I
Buster,
tell you...
do me a favor and turn your radio down because we're getting an echo.
Yeah.
Okay.
One.
It's irritating for the audience, and we don't want to irritate our audience because they'll change the channel or turn off the radio.
Well, that's incredible how well it picks up. But anyway, getting back to the point, Pacifica, okay, was like a little sister. It used to be, when I was 10 years old, you were probably pretty close, right? 1960. It was a surfer town, a lot like Santa Cruz, right? Real nice, beautiful. It's like paradise. Now, a few years later, I'll never forget this.
We've really got less than a minute left, Buster, so you got to...
I'll summarize it. Businessmen from the East Coast, I see them out on the coast, and they're discussing how they're going to turn our West Coast into a New York-style seaport. I'll end it with this. At the end of the day, the more people you got, the more problems you got. Thank you, folks.
Okay, hey, thank you for calling 479-1080. That was Buster in Santa Cruz. And we've got an hour ahead of us for the Saturday special, the D word, the discussion of the D word. From 11:06 to 12 noon. So we'll be taking more calls then. So stay with us. And I'm fascinated by this whole thing. And I think that there are groups of people who are quite upset over the projects that have been proposed and are being developed now. And so we can talk about those specific projects if you'd like, right here on KSCO Santa Cruz, Salinas, Monterey, San Jose. We've got an hour ahead coming up here, so stay with us. The news is coming up in...
As well as on Highway 156, there's 11 minutes delay, and that is as you head out to Hollister. Highway 156 West between Prunedale and Castroville is also running on a 7-minute delay. Current temperature outside the KSCO studio is 70 degrees. Today will be sunny with a high near 85. Tonight, mostly clear, low of 60. Tomorrow, sunny, high near 87. Tomorrow night, mostly clear, low of 63. And Labor Day Monday, sunny, high near 90. On the seas today, west winds 10 to 15 knots with gusts up to 20 knots. Rising today to 20 to 25 knots with gusts up to 30 knots this afternoon. Wind waves 3 to 5 feet. Tonight, northwest winds 20 to 25 knots with gusts up to 30 knots. Wind waves 5 to 8 feet. KSCO News Talk time is now 11:06, and we take you back to the Saturday Special with your host, MZ.
David Pendleton.
Good morning.
Good second hour morning. Oh, my God.
It's here.
The lines are jammed already. Well, there might be one line available, line 6, I think. But right now, before we get to the phones, let's talk to our good friend Dave Michaels.
Good morning, MZ.
How's the
Yes,
Dave
still
Cave?
Sales have been slow, but that's okay. I've been getting, caught up with some other things, but we're ready to sell, MZ. The doors are open. Stop by. I'll be out there till 2 o'clock. If you don't have time to make it out today, you can always go to KSCO.com or KSCOhealth.com and order there. But if you want the discount, if you want that 30% discount, you have to show up. The earlier you show up, the better odds you have of finding what you want, MZ. Whether that's the digestion pack, nightly essence, sleep ease, glucogel, whatever it is that you're looking for, odds are better if you show up earlier that you get what you want.
Do we ever talk about the if you want to increase your sex hormones?
I don't like talking about that, MZ.
We have products for that.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, like say put more lead in your pencil. We have stuff for that.
And I've been told, but I have a friend who in San Francisco who says. Next time you're down at the Dave Cave, pick me up some. What is it?
Is there a test?
Yeah, that. XERA test.
Yeah. We have that still at the Dave Cave. And, MZ, the brain and heart pack is what Dr. Wallach would recommend up to go along with that. The brain and heart pack and some Zera.
Along with it.
Zera test, yes. The brain and heart pack is the basis.
What does Zera test do?
Zera test helps boost your male testosterone levels, so you get a little more.
As opposed to the female testosterone levels.
Right. We have stuff for that too.
And that's called
Zerafem.
Zerafem. And I know from personal testimonials that Zerafem makes you horny.
Oh my goodness, MZ. That is some spicy stuff there. Well, we have that as well. We have
plenty of that?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
I would recommend, though, the brain and heart pack and then adding the Zera test or Zerafem. Always, MZ, start off with the healthy start pack and just add
I should probably go in before the before the what? That's the word, Bill Brooks.
Before the rush.
Before the rush.
Yeah.
Because if I go after that and pick up for my friend, and they're gone, I'll have no one but myself to blame.
Right.
For talking about this on the radio.
Well, if you have problems or you want to decide or you want help deciding which product is right for you, call 218-5726. That's 218-KSCO.
And that will connect to a bank of people or just you?
A bank of phones manned by me. And maybe we'll get somebody else in there if we can force them in there. But for right now, I will answer that phone call if I am available at that time. Otherwise, I'll return your message.
Sounds great, Dave
Thank
Michaels.
you,
Let's go to hour number 2.
Oh, hello, darling. I hate to hang up on you, but I'm sorry, baby, but I have to go. It's time for that wonderful record show. I'd love to visit, but you'll have to call back. KSCO has the inside track.
Well, I must admit that my premise for the show was wrong. I thought it was amazing that things have changed politically. Not so.
I'm sorry, baby, but I really gotta go to KSCO Radio. Bye.
The only thing that's changed is that the state government in Sacramento has decided to step in and say, thou shalt make more housing units to all of the local, right, Bill Brooks?
Pretty much.
God, boy, do I feel stupid. Here I thought I came up with a great, fabulous topic to discuss. Now, it is a fabulous topic because the phone lines are almost full. I am going to give a little clue. If you want to get in, call right now, 479-1080 in area 831. And you'll get in. You'll get in. Because we do have one, maybe 2 lines open. I'm going to say take next, and that would be none other than Rory in Watsonville.
MZ, love your exuberance. Thanks for taking my call. So, if you listen to the the food chain with MO. It was about federal policy, farms going bust and coming out of the 20s and 30s and so on. And so what I see is the government, both the federal and the state, becoming bigger players in the private market. And I think that needs to be reformed. I think we need smaller private lenders starting with the Fed. And so I'd like to ask your guest. I'll give you an example. The house we bought in Watsonville 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, we got it during the half-off sale. And the contractor had come in just to do a few little improvements and modifications. When he heard the price we paid, he said, you couldn't build this house for what you paid. Just the house, the materials. Forget the land, the permits, and everything. So that all that tells me is we have a distorted market. But I think federal, or the Fed, which is not federal, and it's a banking consortium. It's not a federal. It's not a reserve. Those guys are playing with everybody's lives with the zero interest rates that were going on for the last 10 years after the crash of 07 and 08. And the banks that played fast and loose with the loans, they never really paid the price. They should have gone out of business, and better bankers, better managers should have replaced them. And that half-off sale should have gone to a three-quarters off sale, and that would have given more people the ability to get into housing. Now, I know Santa Cruz and the Central Coast is a little different market altogether, but just on a national basis, I would like to see what your guest thinks about the zero interest rate policy that's been on for the last 10 years, or, well, more now. It's like closer to 15 years. And what has that done, in your opinion, to distort the price of housing and the cost?
I would answer that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have to fade your mic up. Go ahead, Bill. Sorry.
I would say that what actually happened is that with the lower interest rates, that opened up to buyers of the lower, economic strata. I mean, the Wall Street Journal today pointed out that if you got a loan 1 year ago, whatever that loan payment was 1 year ago, today it would be 60% higher. Now,
right.
The average person can't stomach that, and so therefore it cuts a lot of buyers out. And of course, it's folks that everybody has their limit for what you can afford to pay, and the higher the rates go, the more it cuts people out. Yeah.
That what allowed us to get into the game in 2011, exactly. I could demonstrate income, solid income.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what helped us. But the thing is with the low interest, super low interest rates, and let's call it what it is. It was zero from the Fed to the banks, 0.25%, 0.5%, whatever it was. But that also allowed money to be cheaper, and as a developer, this drove up the return that you got. So I think it was a distortion. There's got to be a happy medium somewhere where you got some interest coming back for savers, and that's going to buffer the value of the housing into a more realistic zone. So when interest rates are 5-6%, you can't get these outrageous prices because people can't afford it.
Well, what it does is it limits the amount of people that can buy it. I've got a friend that's just finishing up a 12-unit subdivision in above SoCal, Park Avenue, and those houses are going to sell for about 1.7 to 1.8, and with the higher interest rates, his pool of buyers, of course, is not as good as it was a year ago. Now, the only thing I think that'll bail him out, hopefully, is that supply and demand. There's not much supply in Santa Cruz, and there is enough demand that he'll find people that can step up and make the payments at that level.
Okay, last question, then I'll bail out. With the coming economic crash that I see coming in the next 12 to 18 months, how is that going to impact investors in housing that are taking loans now, and they've got these units that are going for 1.7 mil mid-county?
Yeah.
Who's going to get left holding the bag? Because it's going to happen.
Well, I'd rather pose the "is it going to happen" question. I see the market over the hill in the Santa Clara Valley as going very strong with no layoffs, and they're still paying, almost beginning wages of $150,000 a year, and I don't see that going south. If that goes south, well, then you're right. It would radically change things. But until that happens, we're doing just fine here in Santa Cruz.
Okay, time will tell. And I own property in California, and I would like to see a correction for the sake of the young people coming up.
Yes.
And I'll put up one last thing. My son-in-law daughter bid on a house 6 months ago in Watsonville. It was on the market for $790,000. They bid $8. A week later, it was over $900,000. And they just said, we're going to hold off. And I did. I told them, hey, you know what? Hold off. The half-off sale is going to come back.
But the guy that bought it could afford the payments, and probably a year down the road, it'll be 1.2. Wow. So
yeah, I'm a free market guy, but I think we're looking at a very distorted value in the market overall. Again, Santa Cruz County and the Central Coast, around the Bay Area, around Santa Clara and San Jose, obviously is different. But overall, I think we're overvalued. And I'll let you go, but thank you for your time, and thank you, MZ, for having your guest.
Yeah, thanks, Rory.
All the best.
Amy's here. You have a question.
Rory, don't go away. I have one question for you.
It's too late.
That's okay.
I didn't realize your question was
No,
for
I
him.
just talking about the zero interest.
Zero. Yeah, I didn't understand any of that.
No. Recently, I heard something else. Zero down payment, zero interest from Bank of America, but only made a loan for the certain minority group people.
Oh, that's right. I heard about that yesterday.
Did you hear? Yeah,
yes.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
But now including Asian, so they were, they had Hispanic and also African American. So that's available for them. That's it.
Should that be legal?
I don't know.
That doesn't sound. You know what we're talking about, Bill?
No.
Yeah,
okay. Which bank was it?
Bank of America.
Bank of America. Yeah. It was in the news. It was a news item yesterday.
Yeah.
That I heard, and I guess Amy heard.
Yeah.
That basically said zero interest and zero down payment is now available for Hispanic borrowers.
Yeah, but for certain state, I don't think.
Well, it probably
Texas
for people that are in certain income brackets. Like if you're a Hispanic person that works at McDonald's, you probably don't make a lot of money, and so they give you a zero interest loan and whatever. But I don't know.
So you have anybody else who's heard about that?
Yeah, not California. They some
you definitely
other state.
Remember it wasn't
Texas,
California.
I think Florida too.
Yeah,
I
did a double take when I heard that. I said,
state
wow.
or something. Yeah, they have that available.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
never heard about that.
If redlining is illegal, why shouldn't that be illegal? Anyhow, you're listening to the KSCO Saturday Development Special and Housing Special, I guess, with Bill Brooks, an enormous big developer here in Santa Cruz. And I tease him. I've known Bill for over 50 years. He is an amazing. He's someone that I've admired for many years because he gets things done. You know, there are a lot of developments that wouldn't have happened if it weren't for Bill. And it's the first time I've had him on my program here. I think he's been on KSCO a time or two before on other subjects. But if you want to talk to him and ask him about development or housing costs or anything related, 479-1080 in area 831, and we do have one line available right now. I'm going to hit take next, and that will be Terry in Capitola. You're on, Terry.
Hey, Michael and Bill. Good to see you.
Oh, it's Warm Board Terry. I know that name,
yeah.
That voice, yeah.
And I want to thank Bill again for that wonderful dinner the other night. We'll have to do it at our house the next time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. But this is in my wheelhouse. Back when I was in college studying architecture, I spent summers as a building inspector in my town back in New Jersey I grew up in. A person would come in the morning with a set of plans at 8 or 9 o'clock and walk out with a building permit by lunch. And it is not that big a deal to plan check a set of plans. Back when I was still practicing architecture, I shared an office with another architect, and we would plan check each other's plans if we were done drawing them before we would submit. And I'd spend about an hour plan checking his plans. He'd spend about an hour checking mine. That's not that much to do. The work is not that heavy. And when I used to go down to the world's tallest basement, which is what we used to call the county building, the Puzzle Palace, the vast majority of people in the planning department there got environmental studies degrees at UCSC. Don't know anything about geotechnical issues, architecture, structures, blah, blah, et cetera, et cetera. And I used to talk to them, and they would tell me that they're basically trained to say no. That's their starting position. You come in, you want to build something? Well, that's going to be a no. And that was just their attitude. It's just a negative attitude on development. That's the reason why things got so long. And then back when I was still practicing, which was about 20 years ago, I've been doing warm borders, since then. And the vast majority of time was just spent sitting in somebody's inbox, and nothing was really happening. And it's a disturbing thing. I did do one project up in Lafayette in the East Bay. And when I went up there, I got the same rap from them I used to give to people back when I was a college student doing a building inspection. They said, well, why didn't you show up earlier? You could have gotten your building permit today. So it's still possible in some jurisdictions to get same-day processing. But at the time that I was practicing, and this may not be a perfectly accurate statistic, but it's something I was told, they said that County of Santa Cruz had more staff planners than the city of Los Angeles.
That's true.
And when you have, it was like over 100 people, and when you have that number of people that have to shuffle paper, they have to find some purpose for their existence. And so what they do is they shuffle paper, they find reasons to say no, they delay things. It's they're like the law firm of dilly-dally and delay. And it was a horrible situation. It's the thing I don't miss about practicing architecture, because the design work was fun, but the regulatory work, which is about 70% of my work that I did, was getting plans through for my clients, and I just hated it.
Is there a question there?
No, I was just wanted to make a statement.
Well, I've heard that too, and I don't know if that's still the case, but yeah, back when we were doing Citizens for Planning Reform in 1988, it was frequently mentioned that the second smallest geographically county in the state had the largest planning department, even bigger than the.
I'll go further. If back in 1938 you'd walk down to City Hall in Santa Cruz and ask to talk to the planning department, they would have looked at you with a puzzled look on their face and say, "What's that?" And Bill, you live over there on the west side of town, and up in that neighborhood above the university where you live, some of the most charming neighborhoods in the county are in that section, because there's a lot of California bungalows and just pleasant little neighborhoods. And that was done without any staff planning whatsoever, because it turns out when people build houses, they don't usually try to build ugly houses. They usually don't try to overbuild their lots. They're respectful of their neighborhood, of their neighbors, and they basically build nice buildings.
Yeah,
and then in
I
the meantime,
might add that none of them have fallen down either. So you go,
yeah.
I wonder why I need to spend months in plan check with my building plans when they were all produced by state licensed engineers and so on. And why isn't this more expeditious like it was in the old days? Houses, they tear more down than they burn down. So I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And anyhow, nothing has been improved by the planning department. They make and actually, when you want to look at where they put the most amount of effort of the planning department is in Live Oak, and that has the ugliest neighborhoods in town. So where they have the greatest amount of regulatory oversight is where they build the crummiest neighborhoods. And like I say, back in 1938, when they had none of the above, they built the most charming neighborhoods. So go figure.
Okay. Yeah. Terry, thank you for bringing these points up on the KSCO Saturday special.
Right.
All the best to you. Take care. Here's the next caller, Tony in Live Oak. Tony, you're on.
Yes, hi, MZ. Terry's right about everything he said, and I can verify some of his rumor mongering there because I was a building inspector for between 79 and 89, and I don't know if Bill Brooks knows me, but I was one of the best liked inspectors because I never really had. I used to be a contractor before that, so I knew how to talk to them, and I never confronted them, and I also would make multiple visits to a building site per week and per day when we were restricted to like one visit per week. But MZ, I want to say that the woman who sings that beautiful opener song for your second hour.
Oh yes.
If you can figure out who she is, I'd like to be able to drop one of those Xerothem tablets into her drink.
Oh. Okay. Well, we've been trying to figure that one out for 30 years. And,
okay,
and the lady, if she's still living, is 30 years older now than she was then, obviously. So.
Okay, well, I'll still be in the running. Anyway, but I was a building inspector, and I want to say that it was so bad. I think that the problem was that the Board of Supervisors wanted to restrict building, and I think the word came down through the planning department. I didn't know they were so well staffed, but people would leave after a few years. Guys like John Swift and his wife Deidre, well, he married her while they were in the planning department. They broke off and had a company that would smooth the way of anybody's permit for, I imagine, several $1,000s because they knew exactly who to talk to at the building department and how to move things through expeditiously. So, Bill, were you around in '79?
You know, I remember your style of overview when you came on the job site. I mean,
hey, great.
What we used to get was that, you know, everything gets changed a little bit. No project is ever perfectly built the way exactly to the plan, and we'd get the inspectors out there. We'd say, well, we changed the rebar configuration or whatever in the you know, in the foundation, and it's not exactly the plan, but it looks like, you know, it meets or exceeds what building code would be. The inspector would look at it, he'd say, yeah, that looks okay to me. He'd pull out his red pencil, he'd change your job copy and initial it as okay. Now today they won't do that. They'll say, you need to have your engineer come out here, stop the job, have your engineer come out and reanalyze it, draw up, you know, the change, send it into the building department, and then we'll send it out to our contract reviewers, and probably maybe in a couple, 3 weeks, they'll get back to you and let you know if that change is okay. And so the job shut down for 2 weeks, where in the old days, it happened expeditiously and from a you know, the quality build situation, nothing, you know, they're both the same. Just one takes 10 times longer than the other. And that kind of example, you know, just reverberates through the whole process.
Well, MZ, you just heard the example of why Bill Brooks was so successful, because he surely knows his business, and if he remembers me, I appreciate it, because I never told anyone I had a 5-year degree in civil engineering, that I did all the plant checking for Inland Steel for several years and became a sales engineer for them before I became the operations manager for city schools. And when Proposition 13 came along, they tried to cut my salary by $7,000 per year because Lincoln Blue said he had to have more blood on the floor when they were going through. I wrote up the budget, and they didn't accept it. So anyway, that drove me into the planning department, and I was going to be taking over for Lubat Chikalupi. Remember him?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Anyway, I decided that I didn't want to do administration work, so I said, put me in at the lowest level. The reason I applied is that the only job open was for the top spot in the building department. But by the time I got interviewed several months later, they had an opening for Inspector 1, and I became Inspector. I established the certification program at Santa Cruz County, and they were so happy with the increase in quality of inspection that they started giving people 10% or 5% raises for getting certification. So I started all that many years ago. But do you actually remember a guy named Tony Cuspo back in the 70s or 80s?
I believe I do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the main guy was one of the great guys at the county who then later went to the city was Dick's.
Foster Kalou, no,
Dave
Dick
Steves?
Stubendorf.
No,
Oh, Dick Stubendorf. Oh, yeah.
Stubendorf. Now, he was a real pragmatic guy. He'd go out and take a look at it. He'd say, well, here's the rules, and here's what we could do to assist your situation and keep
He
us.
was a building designer. You know that, Bill?
Well, I didn't
He
know
was
that. I
actually-
knew him when he was in charge of the whole building department. I remember I
I
did
went to high school with him. Yeah.
Did you?
Well,
Yeah.
he was in charge with the whole building for the city, but he worked for the county first.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
He was my boss. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Tony, great. Thanks for calling 479-1080. Here's Steve in SoCal. You're on the KSCO Saturday Special with Bill Brooks and MZ, and Amy's here too.
Hi, Mike. I just want to point out the possibility that this inflationary episode we're going through might be a conspiracy to either make the seniors sell their houses to survive or go back to work and continue to feed the tax coffers. As we speak, China is extending by 5 years their retirement age, for example, right after COVID hit us all with a big drop in the elderly population. And, you know, when is the seniors' plight that on a fixed income going to be addressed with this Joe Biden deliberate infusion of inflation to destroy our retirement, basically? We can't afford to drive our cars unless we sell our house or go back to work, and nobody's talking about that.
Maybe we'll talk about it. Any that gives us a good idea. Thank you, Steve. Here's Arthur in Prunedale.
Hello, MZ.
Hello, Arthur.
I enjoy your program.
Thank you. I'm happy somebody does.
Okay, listen, I am a Bank of America stockholder. I want to go back to that item. I don't want to hear people's I want to talk about my personal experience in the job department. Okay, listen, I called Bank of America Investor Relations yesterday morning to address that issue with the no down payment loans. They beat around the bush. I had to call back 3 times to get anyone that would give me a cogent answer. And this is at a company. This is at a major company. I have their annual report. I'll be happy to show it to you sometime. They have 5 pages in their annual report about diversity, equity, and inclusion. They want to be big social justice warriors. I said, you know, is this a business? What are you doing? We're going to make loans to people without a down payment. And because we want to facilitate people in need to be able to enjoy buying a home. I said, well, that sounds like something for social services. You're going to do this as a business? Didn't you learn anything from 2008? They said, well, everybody's doing this nowadays. We're making a shift in banking to helping people who can't afford to buy a home because they have no down payment to buy a home. And I said, yeah, but they have no stake in the property. When they don't make their payments, they walk away like they did in 2008, and they leave the bank holding the bag. And then they have to make a short sale on the property. And they didn't seem interested in reviewing any of that with me. So there you go.
Maybe that gives them points with the Federal Banking Commission. Maybe they get, you know, a little extra something because they just write it off as a lost leader.
Bill, it's not a good business practice.
Oh, I agree with that.
Make a loan for anything, a car, a home, without a down payment.
Yeah, you say that you are the shareholder of the Bank of America?
Yeah, one of many shareholders.
So, yeah. So do you know what's the China own the Bank of America? I'm wondering about that.
No, you know what the problem is, Amy?
What's the
problem is Amy, let me tell you what I think. The problem is that just like ExxonMobil and BlackRock and all these big companies, they're run by too many woke people who are more concerned with social justice rather than running a prudent business. And I'm stunned that they would tell me that this is the new move in banking, to help people who can't afford to buy a home to buy a home. Well, that's what they did in 2008. And look what happened then. Didn't we learn anything? They're more concerned with CRT, BLM, DEI, all these social justice programs. They're not concerned with doing business prudently because of all the new people coming out of the universities, getting jobs in finance, who are concerned with social justice, not with running a prudent business. If MZ would cave into this stuff, he would be looking to hire minorities by numbers, not by ability. And that's wrong. I'm sorry. You have to run a business like a business, not like a social program.
Yeah. Well, like
that's all
you
I have
say,
to say.
social business is great until you run out of somebody else's money.
Correct. That, Bill. Thank you, Bill. That's the point.
Yeah, now don't go away, Arthur. There, now you can go away.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. There goes Arthur in Prunedale. Completely open board now. So if you've been thinking that you want to participate in this program and cannot, you can call 831-479-1080 or email mz@ksco.com. Go ahead, Amy. Go ahead, Bill.
Amy mentioned this zero interest loan, which I really haven't heard of. But how is that any different than under Measure O or Measure J? And myself as a developer, I have to provide 15 to 20% of the houses that I build to Measure O or Measure J. And what that means in dollars and cents is that the guy that lives in the Measure O house, let's say in Santa Cruz, low-income house, paid half what his neighbor paid next door.
For the exact same quality house?
Pretty much the exact same quality house. I mean, they let us use Formica instead of marble, and a few cost saving, but it's nickels and dimes. It's nothing of any significance. So, it's subsidized, government subsidized housing, and I think the zero interest thing is just a subsidized housing that I don't know why the banks are doing it. Maybe they get extra points with the regulatory people. Who knows?
So, Bill, I have a question for you as a developer. What do you think about future of this industry? You think that this $10,000 cost $10,000, those tiny house, they will revolutionize the entire building industry?
Well, I'm glad to see that the state is stepping up and allowing the ADUs and the lot splits to happen a little easier, because essentially what some people are able to do, in fact, I could do it at my own residence, is I could build a 1,200 square foot 2-bedroom house on the extra land on my lot. I have a 20,000 square foot lot and I have extra land. I could do that, and I could afford to rent that at a way more reasonable rate because I have no land cost. So the state pushing the cities and counties to be more liberal with allowing people to use their properties for creating housing, I think is a good thing, and it's going to go towards easing the pressure for rental income and so on.
Now, those portable, tiny housing, right now there was people was so exciting about it, only cost $10,000. So that will really changing everything, changing the game.
Well, you could always build a little house on a lot if you wanted to build a little house. Where those are being proposed is as the ADUs. And here again, the more of that type of housing, it takes the pressure off the rental for those smaller houses. I mean, if there was a ADU on every other lot in Santa Cruz, all of a sudden the rent for ADUs would be a lot lower than it is today, because here again, supply and demand.
And ADU stands for accessory dwelling unit.
Correct.
And are there any rent controls on ADUs?
I'm not sure, but I know that that when you get a building permit for an ADU, they put a restriction on your deed of your property, that you have to rent it it has to be rented to somebody other than a family member, and and you have to live in the primary residence where it is. So if you have a rental house and you have a big lot, you go, well, gee, I think I'll build an ADU there, have enough room for it, provide another small rental. You couldn't do that because you have to live in the main house on the property.
Well, suppose you are willing to do that, but then your situation changes. Are you suddenly not allowed to rent your ADU years after it's been built and years after you did? Are you sure about all this?
It's like let's say move to nursing home or
I would
senior
say that you, I'm sure, would have to go through some process with the city to allow you to do that. I mean, if you got transferred, let's say, to another area and you wanted to keep your house, you decided to rent it, does that mean you have to shut down your ADU? I'm not sure. But I'll bet you that there is some process with the city you'd have to go through to get, quote, their approval.
Wow. That's very important information that we need to find out. Huh.
So, for instance, an old couple, and they have this, they don't no longer live in their house. They rent it. They didn't sell, and they cannot have it because they don't live there anymore. They can move to senior housing, whatever, you know.
I don't know. Maybe one of your listeners knows the exact rules on that.
Yeah, that'd be great. 831-479-1080 if you know the answer to that question. We have a number of callers here still waiting, and the board is quickly filling up here. So let's take the next one. Flinks and Aptos. You're on, Flinks. And
hey, I just wanted
please turn down the radio. So.
Oh, I did. I know. I'm so enamored with your show. I got it blasting, and I'm listening. And I'm calling at the same time. But I think you guys are doing a great job, and I just wanted to say that. Great discussion. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I told you, big developer Bill Brooks, that this would be a popular show because we've never done this before. Next caller, Rich in Salinas.
Yeah, good afternoon or good morning. There's another half hour here. Three things, the good news, bad news, and a suggestion. The question for the good news is, what do you think the cost of living increase is going to be this year?
I don't know. Your crystal ball's as clear as mine. Take a look.
I mean, as much as we've gone up in costs of living, I would think we're going to have a pretty high cost of living, via Social Security or disabilities or anything. Second thing is...
So the rents are going to be allowed to go up more.
Oh, that? Okay. The other thing is the globalists that want to take over the world, they're not going to allow anybody to own anything by the year 2030. That's their plan. That means you can't own property, cars, businesses possibly, farmland. Everybody in the lower class and middle class is all going to be dependent on the government. So the government's going to take care of you however you think that's going to be, but you're not going to be allowed to own anything. You're going to be taken care of as a baby with the government. And Michael, the suggestion is, did you ever get a chance to get Tom Quinn a gig on Coast to Coast?
No. I have to talk to George on something else later today, so I'll try to remember that.
Him and one of his doctors, John Young in particular, that would be a fantastic show on the vaccines.
Right. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, take care. That was Rich in Salinas. Here comes Alan, also in Salinas. You're on, Alan.
Hey, I've got an idea. Got a lot of homeless people. A lot of them got storage units. They got those storage lockers. Just let them live in them. Them things are everywhere. There's a ton of units. Just let them live in them. Quit breaking everybody down. If somebody wants to stay overnight in their storage locker, let them put some bathrooms out there. Let the people that live on site, that manage the place, go ahead and watch them. Put a security guard out there. You already got the housing. Somebody come up with an idea that works. You know, there it is right there. If you look at the people that use them. Okay, thanks a lot.
You're about the fastest talking caller we have, and you get an award for that, Alan in Salinas. Here's Bill in Santa Cruz.
Hi. I'm in the business. I deal with ADUs all the time in the city, and yes, you do have to live in it. And if you decide, if your situation changes, then you have to get rid of your renter and
then just have it be vacant. Then have it be vacant.
That's surprising.
And pretty soon they're going to have. Some people are saying they're going to be having a vacant house vacancy tax of $6,000 if it is deemed that your house is empty and it shouldn't be.
Well, I think what's going to happen when that happens, I'm going to go into business. I'm going to have a house-sitting business where I will come in and I will occupy people's houses. I'll charge $100 a night, and I'll have people come in and live for real in their house.
I like that. Reverse rent. The owner pays.
Sure.
Yeah.
Pay people to live.
Yeah. No big deal.
Yeah.
I think that'll work.
$6,000 a year is like $500 a month. So that's only like 5 days.
Well, the interesting thing about this, purportedly it's for affordable housing, and purportedly it would raise $2 or $3 million a year after you deduct the cost of bureaucracy.
Were you listening to the program we did on that?
No, I just come in. How much affordable housing can you do for that? And
exactly.
When they say it's for quote affordable housing, what does that mean? I mean, what do you mean by afford? I mean, is that some kind of program? Is that actually building affordable housing? Is that just saying something is for affordable housing? That's like apple pie and motherhood. You know, it doesn't really mean anything unless you're very specific. So anyway, thank you.
Let's ask what Bill Brooks thinks affordable housing is.
Affordable housing is what is in relation to your income. And if I agree with the government when they say you shouldn't have your housing costs be any more than 30 to maybe 35% of your bring home wages. And if it's not, then that's affordable to you. And the trouble in Santa Cruz is that there's a lot of people that don't make the kind of wages that they make over the hill of the Silicon Valley, and they're paying, double that for their living environment, and it's just it's tough. But the other side of the coin is that the person that just built the apartment house that they live in has payments, and they need that amount of money just to cover their payments. So the only hope on making it really affordable, and you do see it with these government grants to the low-income housing developers. I'm doing a project in Gilroy right now that I'll probably turn over to a low-cost housing developer to actually build, because a market rate developer would not be able to get enough rent to even cover the payments. But the low-cost developer will get 30, maybe 40% of government grants that he doesn't have to pay back. So that's 30 to 40% of the building costs that he has no debt service on, and he can then afford to rent at a lower rate. And the people that give them those grants, they're very much involved to make sure that those rates are really affordable when he gets done. In fact, what most of these guys do is they don't mind the rate for rent going right down to where they're just breaking even, because what their real business is management. Like Mid-Peninsula Housing, they manage thousands of units, and they get paid a management fee for that. So that's kind of really their business. A lot of the affordable housing people, they don't mind breaking even on the construction costs, because the long-term business is managing these units on an ongoing basis.
Okay, let's go to our next caller, John in Silicon Valley. John, you're on.
Yeah, so on SB 9, the thing is that's the governor that signed that. It's SB 9 and SB 10. And what those are is on the 10, you can do a lot split. And even up in Woodside, of all places, I don't know if you heard about that, where they tried to declare Woodside a cougar sanctuary to try to get it so they didn't have to play by the rules of SB 9 and SB 10. And even the lawyer said, saying who can occupy or not occupy, it's all unenforceable. I mean, you were signing a letter of an agreement, but there's no one that's going to hold you to it. So it's you're saying you're going to do something in the government, but the lawyers all said for the city of Woodside, Palo Alto, unenforceable.
Yeah,
That's just.
Yeah, I heard about that. The way the city wanted to wiggle-waggle out of that was saying that they have an environmental sanctuary with the for the cougars, and so therefore any of the land that is environmental sanctuary, which was anything other than the house, the property the house sits on, and it quickly got thrown out. But
no, the comedy was that was the nickname for Rosewood up there on Sand Hill Road, is where all the cougars hang out, if you get what I mean. So that was the running joke. It was the Woodside Cougar Sanctuary. But there's our government at work. It's just crazy, and God bless you for building those buildings. Because we do that, and it's just it's a pain in the neck. You have to deal with all these planning people and what MZ is going through with his patio. I mean, it's insanity. There's no rationality or proportion to anything anymore.
Pretty much.
So, John, what do you do?
Yeah, I've sent you some emails and trying to help you with your patio. We do development. So I sent you the fire marshal, my friend, Captain Jones, and I sent you to try to get your sacred riparian zone, which is occupied by 3 radio towers. So if it's already sacred, why are the radio towers in it, right? I mean, it's just like...
Well, because they're grandfathered. They were there first, before there was a riparian rule,
But it could be, but that's what I'm saying. They come up with these new laws, then they're going after somebody for no good reason. It becomes its own insanity. And I sent you those emails with Captain Jones to sign off on your patio.
I'm going to do that. I will. Thank you, John. You can imagine there's just so much that's clobbering me here all at once. I don't know.
No, you're with one of the best builders around. Get his advice, and he just says, we just have to get the experts, just what he said. Our experts have to be better than their experts, and that's how you get it done. And then you give them a reason to just sign it off, and it's gone. The running joke in San Jose, he'll know it. Everything is $900 and a variance. It's like a variance. Everything's a variance on a project. It's just a way to shake money out of you, and there's nothing you can do about it. You got to play the game. I mean, I hate to say it, but they're shaking you down because you want a permit, and unless you pay them their fee, the pound of flesh, you're not going to get it. It's a sad world, but
I want to save a community asset. Bill has seen it.
No, but
I don't want to talk about this now.
No, but it's the same thing. It's on building and planning and ADUs. It's all about code enforcement and be proportional. And that's the key. They're supposed to be there to help you because they work for you. And that's the key.
Oh.
You take care and have a wonderful day.
Yeah, thank you very much, John. Appreciate it. Here's Ron in Carmel. Ron, you're on. Ron.
Hello?
Yeah, Ron, you're on.
Yeah. Hey, thanks. Actually, I was talking about Bill. Bill, I think you're doing everything great in Scotts Valley. With all the other things you've done there is great. I know what you've gone through. We have started, we started in Scotts Valley with animal health, and we had 6 pet stores. And now we're up to.
Yeah, weren't you in Kings Village? Where was your pet store?
Actually, I owned the real estate company over there in Santa Cruz.
Okay.
But anyway, the bottom line is, my buddy, he became the president. Well, he was the owner of the little pet store, and we took that, and now we went into 350. I went to Germany. So we ended up with Petco, and then I was kind of like pushed out because of they wanted to bring in the guy from Larry, whatever his name is, from Toys R Us. Anyway, that goes back to corporate. So anyway, Bill, you've done a great job. I think you've done unbelievable stuff in Scotts Valley, And
I have done a number of
we
projects
got, like,
in Scotts Valley, that's for sure. But
well, you and I talked once before, probably 25 years ago, right there at the corner. But yeah, when you go back to so many other people. But anyway, I just wanted to say that you're doing a great job, and Mike, your property up there on Marmati, I think you don't own it still, right?
Well, property I had for sale, that was going to be my retirement. That didn't work out.
Yeah. You know what? I would buy that. That is, get Bill to buy it.
Okay.
That's a great piece of property, and my old friends, the Holcombs and Seascape and all that kind of stuff. But anyway,
well, great, Ron.
I think you guys are.
Thank you for the compliments, and I'm sure Bill shares that too. So,
hey, are you still going to? Are you still doing the Sturgis thing on the Harleys?
Well, I finally advanced in age to the point where it didn't make good sense to ride motorcycles anymore.
Wow, so you're one of them. I didn't even know that.
I rode to Sturgis and back 5 times. In fact, one time we went on to the Harley factory because they were having a birthday, and then we went on to Laconia, New Hampshire, which is 80 miles from the Atlantic Ocean. So
you must know my good friend Ted Anderson.
Yeah, so I could say I rode coast to coast. That and $2 gets you a cup of coffee.
Great.
Mike.
Anyway, we're about out of time here.
Mike,
right?
Bill and Jeff. I don't know if I should say Canepa. Anyway,
Oh yeah, Jeff
Bill
Canepa. Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
Anyway, we're at the end of the show now, Ron. I'd love to talk with you, and I have your number, okay?
All right.
But we're at the end of the show. Thank you very much.
All right.
Bye. Bill Brooks, the big developer himself. It has been an honor to have you on KSCO. Want to have you back again sometime. Maybe we'll solve some problems.
Well, we got some good comments from your listeners.
Yeah, this is great. Okay, so that's the end of the show. I'm going to thank you, Amy. Say thank you, caller. See you later.